Here's case study misinformation, which is story number one I promised to share today. You heard this word a lot, I believe. Misinformation, disinformation. Many people discuss how fake news dominate or become very popular on all types of social media platforms, even on some types of media, traditional media. This is one of the most hot topics, especially these days when during the COVID pandemic, when we hear a lot, all types of strange claims, for instance, linking COVID-19 pandemic to 5G networks, for instance, or suggesting that COVID-19 vaccines can change people's DNA. And this is what we often call and define as misinformation or disinformation. When it comes to questions, and this is an example of important social questions many people are concerned about. And when it comes to this specific topic of disinformation, most people are concerned about three questions. Those people who study this phenomenon. The first question is, who spreads disinformation? The second question is, how does it spread? And the third question is, to what effect? So the three key questions, and actually we can answer all of them by relying on this type of social media data we're collecting and analyzing with methods I will discuss in a second. How we can study social media misinformation? If we are, say, into more kind of ethnographic approach, we might try to observe things. And it's actually very helpful often to start with an observation, whatever you're doing. Start with an observation and you find examples of misinformation or disinformation on social media. You can find the audiences that engage with this misinformation, disinformation. For instance, we're looking at communities of people who try to convince broader population in an idea that vaccines, all types of vaccines, especially COVID-19 vaccines, are harmful. Or some people try to convince us that COVID-19 vaccines are introduced in order to control society. And we're looking at Facebook groups, for instance, where those claims emerge and disseminate. And the first step to start looking into them is to start with an observation. But in fact, we can always scale this work and use what we call automatic techniques to look not just at one group, not just at two groups, but sometimes hundreds of them, thousands of them, even millions of pieces of information we can analyze using them. And that's what we're going to discuss today, how we do it. So when it comes, again, coming back to more observational approach, we're often adopted, say, for instance, by journalists. And very important, they do an important job, like with that specific case of tweet that discussed impeachment, Trump impeachment is ongoing. It was one of the first, the tweet that appeared just very shortly after Washington, D.C. events last month, became very prominent on Twitter. It went viral, as it's called. And it appeared to be that many claims were not true. Journalists talked to experts, show that why those claims are misleading, but they also talked to the creator of the tweet, who agreed to talk to them. This shows this type of work is done by journalists, by fact checkers. But we, as people who lack a bit more systematic approach often, we are interested not just in one tweet, but in many of them. We're interested not just in one news item, but in many hundreds, thousands of them. Because we want to know the trends, we want to know how things, what is the bigger picture. And that's the bigger picture. This is the bigger picture for the week, one of the last weeks of December last year. And this is the picture of all types of COVID-19 claims that been seen by social media audience in the UK. across 7 different platforms. So our team at Computational Propaganda Project analyzes 7 platforms, collects data from them in order to understand what are the audiences and engagement levels of content that we describe as junk news. So essentially content that can be misleading. We can't check every single piece of content. That's where the disadvantage of automatic approach comes in, but we still can learn something. See, I will show you what we can learn. First of all, we can learn figure 1, junk news, state-backed media, and mainstream media. So mainstream media are popular big media like Guardian, BBC, trusted media. State-backed media that is sponsored, controlled by foreign, what we call authoritarian states, like Russia, China. These states use media sometimes, their media to influence situation, political life in Western countries like the UK, and often disrupt this political life. And junk news websites that I mentioned, misleading websites that claim that you take vaccine and your DNA becomes a monkey DNA. That's one of the claims that exists in anti-vax communities. We compare the potential audience of all the COVID-19 related articles that people can potentially see on platforms we analyze. And you see the audiences consist of several billions of people, or several billions of users, in fact. So, of course, it goes beyond the UK. And you see mainstream media very big when it comes to potential audiences. But when it comes to engagement, so clicks, likes, comments, figure 4, you see junk news are, in fact, on average, per article, getting much more engagement. Why is that? This is a good question. This is a great question. Here, we're not answering it. Well, one of the answers could be that content is just different. Mainstream media content is more factual, serious. Very often, junk news rely on sensationalist type of titles, leads, and so on. But here what's important conclusion from this, what it shows us, it gives us a picture that allows us to compare mainstream news websites to junk news and see actually what's happening to their audiences, what's happening to people who see their content on social media. How do they get that information? That's what we'll discuss in a second. Before that, just to show you that what we are doing very often is based on analysis and collection analysis of large quantities of data from social media. But it's not the only way to collect data, and not the only way to analyze misinformation and disinformation. There are many tools for that. You see, this is an example from just a kind of starting pack of tools available from the link on top of your screens. First draft basic toolkit, just basic toolkit. You see there are many different ways to collect and analyze data, but very often those tools that offered here, they of course do not allow analyze trends and large quantities of data that we're discussing. Nevertheless, if you're interested, you're welcome to check it.